Hey everybody, it's Richard Harris and Scott Leese, my bearded partner in crime, here for another episode of the Surf & Sales podcast, brought to you with the help of Salesforce Sales Cloud, Lead 411, Vidyard, and Gong.io, the game changer solution. So want to bring in a really fun guest, someone I've known at a distance. I don't know, Francois, if we've ever spoken much. But I know Scott, if at all. I know you know Scott fairly well, but it is Francois Bourdeau, who is at Encore Business Solutions, and I'll even go and say and throw it out there, the 5 on Friday, which if you haven't caught 5 on Friday, it's actually a lot of fun, and he'll explain what that is in a bit. But Francois, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I like the bearded duo. I hadn't heard that one before. And even if we haven't talked, I feel like just by connection, everything I've kind of heard and seen and read with Scott, and that I already kind of know half of, not half of who you are, but part of you.
It's all true. It's all true. The good and the bad is all true. Like I'll even own the bad stuff, right? So.
But what he knows about you, Francois, is that you have the best hair in the industry, or you're at least competing for the best hair in the industry.
I think he competes with Doug Landis. I think he and Doug have very good.
And Barker might be in the mix as well.
Oh yeah, Mark. Yeah, that's right. Barker, Scott Barker.
I thought that was not a stab, or maybe a compliment, or a side. What do they call that, Scott? Like a sideways compliment about on TNS.
Backhanded compliment.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Richard. There was a few late nights where, for some reason, maybe it was just being locked up in during the pandemic, but I seem to find a lot of wigs. If I'm being truthful, I think Amy's peer pressure got me to purchase a few more. So.
Tell everybody what your role is. I mean, you're a senior AE, Microsoft partner seller. What does that mean? What does your day-to-day look like at Encore? What are you selling? What's the cycle like? What's the price point? Give everybody some there.
For sure. Yeah. Great question. And then I'll give you like the really, really quick background. I came I don't know if there's like ever a traditional sales path. That's a whole other episode around like just how people get into sales. I really don't think there is a traditional path. I actually think people with like the diverse backgrounds often brings like so much to the table. So I came from like the technical space. I started on a help desk, and when I was helping troubleshoot like commission check issues one day, I was like, man, like this is the side I need to be on. So I eventually worked my way into sales via pre-sales, and I've worked for a few different partners. So I've been kind of in this Microsoft ecosystem for about a decade. And I'm super fortunate. And the one thing I'll tell you in this last year, especially Thursday night sales listening in, I've been predominantly dealing with inbound activity, because a lot of the partners, and maybe it's the ecosystem I'm in, we deal a lot with inbound. And then it's really kind of qualifying, okay, is this a good fit? Do they really need the service and the software we're offering? I'd say I spend like 80% of my time talking to COOs, CFOs, talking about replacing kind of existing ERP systems because they've outgrown things. So typically, they're not so much fast growth, but they've grown or acquired a bunch of companies. So my day looks like a lot of scheduling and orchestrating calls between myself and subject matter experts, and trying to get people the information they need to find out if this is really worth their time. And then back to the traditional pipeline hygiene. How many of these deals are real?
When you say that you're inbound, does that mean you're inbound only, or like inbound primarily? What I'm getting at. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, you go.
No, what I'm getting at is like, I think there's a difference between somebody who is a seller who gets inbound leads as well as prospects, and somebody who doesn't prospect at all and is just getting inbounds. So I was just curious, what is your...
Yeah, I would say we've had the luxury, and maybe it's because the company I work for has been around like 30 years, so they have some good credibility, but honestly, like 95% of the inbound work and leads are enough. So, I've had to prospect a little bit in certain areas, but there's enough activity coming into us for us to stay busy.
Now, what does everybody get wrong about inbound selling? What are some of the like false beliefs that people have? For example, my belief might be that inbound selling is far easier than outbound, right? So what do people get wrong about inbound sales that you'd like to kind of
Well,
clearly hear?
I would probably agree with that last statement you made, right? I mean, I have a massive amount of respect for people who basically have to find all their own logos. And I'll make the assumption that if you found that logo, you probably aren't going to chase that person or that group of people within that organization unless you think they're actually qualified. So you're probably like qualifying them is a foregone conclusion. I would say just what I've seen that can burn a lot of time is people don't, upfront really know how to qualify them or find out who the right person is. And then they can exhaust a massive amount of internal resources, essentially with someone that is not really a qualified buyer.
Do you see people take the leap too fast between being an inbound and thinking, oh, Scott's going to give me my credit card, going to give me his credit card today? That's something that I've seen over the years is like people confuse interest with purchasing power and immediate intent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I'm, everybody uses a different nomenclature, but I'm like kind of in the upper mid market, right? So they're going to be spending like north of 100K on the services side to upwards of $1 million. And then on the software side, ARR is like, it could be, 40 or 50 to, a quarter of $1 million. So it can get, that's not like a two conversations credit card conversation, right? Transaction. It's quite a few people involved, explaining to them the process. They want to know who's going to be involved. So it's, I don't want to just, call it solution selling, like that's simple, but it isn't transactional.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think some people assume because there's intent and they're reaching out to you, okay, we just need to basically, provide them some pricing, provide this, and right. It should be a straightforward transaction.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people skip over the part where you actually have to sell.
Yeah. Well, and I think in my case, I would say there's people that are coming to me that are basically shopping for. They've already picked us as a product, right? So we're a Microsoft partner, but I'll use the analogy of like they're buying a Honda. It's just which dealer are they getting it from? Versus there might be going like, well, do I actually want a Honda or do I want a Nissan or a Mazda? So when it's the latter and they're saying, okay, I'm convinced on the product, now it's the implementer, then I find the experience I have coming from the technical side, being able to explain to them like all the undocumented things, because now the bar is so high, they can come to you. You need to be able to sell the delta. Like, here's all the things we do that you're never going to find on YouTube and on our website.
Yeah. Now, you've said that you agree with me that inbound and outbound are different, and that outbound is probably a little bit harder to sell.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about compensation plans and structures? Should inbound salespeople be comped the same as outbound? Should outbound salespeople be comped more than inbound? How do you feel about that? How do you think about that? If you were in charge of building the plan?
If I was in charge of it, and I would say, hey, we have this engine that we're paying for, right? So if I was leading the ship and I said, hey, we have this engine that we pay for that puts this opportunity in your lead funnel, and you get to turn it into an opportunity versus, you have to go find those leads. So you're taking that time. My thoughts are you get compensated more on the lead that you get. That's my thinking. And I don't have any good anecdotal evidence out there, but I'm assuming that's.
I fully agree with that. If it's 100%, or in your case, 95% inbound kind of role. Do you agree, Richard? Yeah. Richard's been awfully quiet so far.
Yeah, I know. Well, you've been on fire, man. So I'm just letting you go. I don't know about that. I think the difference is how you view your inbound leads. And I think quantity matters, because your inbound leads, in my opinion, are the most precious. Because there is some, to your point, Scott, you said, I love what you said of don't confuse inbound interest with purchasing intent. It frustrates me when I see people put new salespeople on inbounds where they can't recognize that difference yet. And oftentimes I think there should be veterans on that team to run those leads, because those things typically do convert at a higher rate and faster. So why wouldn't you put your best person on that team, where your new people have to, I wouldn't say earn it, but but they do need to go, they got to go figure some stuff out too. And I think it's hard to go from an inbound inbound SDR to an AE if you haven't actually done the cold calling. So, whereas if I have some valuable people on the inbound, they will have already done both. So my answer is, I think I disagree. I could be swayed depending on, deal size and cycles and markets and, how complex it is, like Scott, at Qualia, I can only imagine you wouldn't put a new person on an inbound lead, and maybe you did, I don't know. Because it's a complex, you're right. It was a complex sale, right?
Yeah, no shot at inbounds if you're brand new or you're, not performing at a high level.
Well, because I think, I'd be curious what both of you think, but I think the patience level of that inbound person is like, I filled out this form, I'm already coming to you, like, why do we have to have five phone calls or meetings, right? So, and a veteran can kind of go, okay, you're coming from this position, you're telling me you're done this, you're interested in X, like, you should be able to really dial it down into that first call to kind of go, this sounds like it makes sense, and not just to be a contrarian, but kind of go like, I don't know if you guys are ready, or I don't even know if this is going to be a fit. Like, let's not waste each other's time. A junior person isn't going to be able to do that. It just takes time to understand that. And, that challenger sale, that concept is great, but I think we all know you can't do that without the experience. You can't just, be
Oh my.
What was that? So that's hilarious.
That would be my kids hijacking the Alexa machine.
Nice.
Coming out of the garage where they're playing, listening to music, onto my computer. Total chaos.
Right. That's awesome.
It was brutal.
So Scott, now do you think that inbound should be compensated differently based on the complexity of the deal, or more or less?
I 100% do. I 100% do. Yeah. I don't know if I have two different parts of my sales org, and one of them is inbound only and the other is outbound only. The outbound only people, to me, are going to get paid more and deserve to get paid more. Now, if it's more of like, we're an outbound organization, but we get inbound leads as well, I'm not paying different on those, if that makes sense. I'm not going to get into the weeds of all that. But if the roles are totally siloed out, yeah, I think that it should be different.
Cool. So I want to maybe put a button on that one and shift topics. You brought up something, Francois, before we jumped in, which was, do you double down on your current career, or do you start a side hustle, right? And so I'm curious where that question comes from for you. I know you have your side hustle of 5 on Friday, a little bit. So just curious where that comes from, and even your own opinion of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's a few things. So, and I think side hustle, I mean, we could have a whole other episode on this, but I mean, I think there's obviously like interest, right? So you like to surf. That's cool, but do you actually want to be a professional surfer and leave your day job and get paid by that? Like, so I think there's the side hustles that can help you build new skills. And like if I was managing a team, I think my comments would be, hey, if they can, I don't care, right? Whether it's playing the guitar or learning to code, like if they think they're going to make you a better person, great. As long as they're not taking away from your 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 hour focus. But I think there's this I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, but this raging debate, right? That I don't even, it's a debate, but opinion that like basically, unless you become an entrepreneur, you will never be successful. Versus, you know, you can never really be that successful in a day job. And I used to kind of lean to, yeah, absolutely, you have to be the entrepreneur. But now I think there is no right answer. You can make a great living as a salesperson. So I'm thinking of this in the framing of really sales, but you can be a happy, fulfilled person working for employer. And you can also be a happy, fulfilled person being an entrepreneur. Is there less of a limit on an entrepreneur? Yeah, I think there really is no cap, but I think the risk keeps getting kind of, pushed aside a little bit. And all we hear is the great stories about, people building a company. And I think we all know, I don't know how many failures there are, but there's probably, 1 in 10,000 that succeeds. And so, kind of starting and doing something on your own, I think is totally fine, but not everybody's up for that. Like some people want to put their 8 hours in, work hard, earn a good living, and then they want to do other things. And some people want to build that company or that business, and that's totally cool, but they just seem to always be at odds with each other.
I think too often we confuse or equate entrepreneurship with the desire to go start some big, massive company and be a gazillionaire. You can be an entrepreneur and do some things that you're passionate about and have fun with and make some money on the side that supplements how you live and your lifestyle. And that's still very successful. It doesn't mean you're not successful, right? That's the part that has frustrated me at times. Is I once had somebody say something to me, I'm going to screw the quote up. It was like, when are you going to start an actual company? And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, my consulting business is not a company. Like that doesn't count. Surfing sales doesn't count. Thursday night sales doesn't count. And I kind of said this to the person. They're like, no, like a real company. Like they doubled down on it, And I think that's a dangerous narrative, for people who have an entrepreneurial itch, right? Or they want to somehow cut the cord slowly or all at once from their W-2. Going that route doesn't mean you suddenly have the desire to try to create $1 billion company. It just means, you want a little bit more freedom and flexibility, and you want to take ownership in creating it.
I mean, part of this has come maybe recently, Richard, like in terms of like, why did this come up? So I've got 3 kids. My oldest is 15, turning 16 in a month. And my middle one is 13, turning 14. And then I have a 10 who just turned 11-year-old. And so my oldest will be going into his 2nd year of high school. And so, careers are coming up, career paths, what other people do. And, often our conversation kind of leans in the direction of what can I make? Like it's all income driven, and that's okay. But I'm like, okay, that job, it requires a lot of school. That's okay. But I've also said, look, if money is the main object, an entrepreneur, people who invent things, is really like, there is no cap there. And the other thing I've tried to say too is, we have friends who are, whether they're lawyers or doctors or, these prestigious types of titles. I said, when they're working, they're making money, but when they're not working, they're not making money. The dream in my mind is, eventually that entrepreneur can be not working and still making money. And so if, he sees kind of these lifestyle things that we've been able to do, travel, and I'm like, yeah, that's all cool, man. But if all you do is work, like how happy are you really going to be?
That's so what Scott does. Scott doesn't work. He just makes money.
I just give off the impression that I work.
Exactly. I know this. You're like Costanza. You just sit there and you look frustrated at your desk, pretending like you're working. So, I agree on some of this. And the other thing I think that, and this just sort of came to mind, was that, we swim in a very certain pond of salespeople, people who are money motivated, money driven, right? And the phrase the side hustles come up for the last 2 or 3 years, I think. And I know plenty of people who work in very big companies and they don't want a side hustle, right? Their side hustle is their hobby, right? I've got a buddy who, he loves making his own barbecue rubs, and he's making his own whiskey in a barrel, and those things are the pieces that give him joy, right? So that when he's working, he's working. So sometimes I don't think that, the side hustle can just be a hobby in some cases. I think that's an important piece. And I think it's up to what you want, right? I also think it'll hit you differently at different ages of your life, at 25 and 30, I should have followed some passions that I had around trying to do something, and I didn't. Even into my 30s and 40s. And even now there's still things that come up, and Scott and I have this conversation, and I just, I probably frustrate the hell out of Scott. And I'm like, what about this idea? And he's like, yeah. And then I just don't do it. So I'm not action oriented quite like Scott. And, some of that's age. Some of it's also how I'm wired. Right. So.
It's doubling down on our conversation into the side hustles and stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's a side thing. I don't even know if it's a hustle, but talk to us about 5 on Friday and the work that you've been doing there for the last year and a half. I mean, it's been a long time now, a year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, the Genesis origin story is just pretty straightforward, and not to overuse COVID as an excuse, but I literally met 2 other people, Patrick and Amy, through LinkedIn conversations somewhere, and it was around January, and we all had some kind of sales kickoff presentation we're putting together. And we all just kind of went, hey man, I love a totally different set of eyes on this. I don't want my colleague to look at it. I want somebody who's never seen it. So we helped each other out. And we're like, that was great, man. More people have got to want this. And we all went, yeah, of course. So we said, well, let's just do it. Let's just get 5 people together on a Friday. 1 person presents, the other 4 give them feedback. And that was it. So put up a website, put up a forum. We didn't want it to cost anything. And it was interesting that the interest level for presenters was higher at the beginning. And then I think maybe people realized wait a minute, I don't want to really stick my neck out and fail in public, if you will. Then the presenter kind of sign up came up. So yeah, we've been going for almost a year and a half. So 60 plus people presented, almost 300 people have passed by. And what blows my mind is that people will give an hour of their day to a stranger.
Have you done this yet, Richard? Have you been on the show?
I don't think I have, unless I was early on. I don't think so. So I also didn't fill out the form to present. So I also, a year ago, Scott, we were trying to bust out 200 episodes of Surf and Sales, or 100 episodes. So I think my time is limited.
Yeah. Well, that's because you do all the work and I don't do any work.
Exactly.
Scott came on and he gave very, very good feedback to a fellow who I think in the moment may have been quite humbled, but that's what it's for, right? It's not like some dragon's den, but it's to get better.
What's interesting is Francois is being kind a little bit, but I gave this person some pretty direct feedback. I went in pretty hard,
this is a bad idea, don't do it.
No, just you're doing this wrong and it's not good. You need to get a lot better very fast. But what's funny is that person ended up losing their job, but not performing well, and has since gotten some other roles and stuff, and has followed up with me consistently. Right. And in the moment, I think the feedback was probably tough for him, but he keeps coming back to the well, messaging me on LinkedIn, he's kept me updated on job hunts and whatnot, asked for advice. And, so I've stayed in touch with this person, and it's an interesting kind of, turn of events from the 5 on Friday show. And I wonder if that's common, actually. And an underrated part of what you've done is you've connected people and given them the opportunity to make new, business relationships and so forth.
It's a little unofficial mentoring,
there was never the kind of, and it was never really an end goal. And people said, hey, do you want to monetize it? The reality is the 3 of us really do this on the side of our desk. It isn't a side hustle for income. Could it become something? Possibly. It takes a few hours of just basically organizing people. It's a Zoom meeting, we record it. But to Scott's point, yeah, I'd say, you know, we have like, you know, 90% customer satisfaction. Well, I should say 99 because nobody's ever not enjoyed it. But I on a regular occasion, will get like an email back to the group and saying, you know, here's the feedback you guys gave me on whether it was my pitch or my cold call script or whatever it was on a Friday. And I did this Monday and Tuesday, these are the results. And I'm just blown away. I'm like, you know, this is cool. It's free coaching, but I'm also really humbled because I told someone it was like a mini MBA this last year because I sat in on almost all these sessions. There's sellers in there with more experience than me. There's areas that I'm not like really competent in. And so I just get to listen in, like it's like raw, real practice, like not stuff in a textbook. And so it's honestly, you know, that's one of my favorite parts of it is just being able to absorb all this.
I'm registering now as a participant, not as a presenter.
There you go.
And I'll tell you one thing, and I'm sure you guys can kind of relate to even in the podcast world. I love bringing in basically the most diverse group, right? Like if we're all strangers, great. And sometimes like this Friday, Scott, I've got a guy from Austin coming on, and he is you're gonna laugh, but like he's got a PhD in rhetoric.
Wow.
So, but like persuasive speech is his forte. So I actually have to fill that spot. I had somebody cancel last minute, but I'm like, this guy's gonna give you amazing feedback on your cold call pitch.
Yeah.
He doesn't probably care about selling, but he'll be like, here's the mechanics of the linguistics you're using.
Right. Yeah.
And we've had a linguist come on, and we had a guy come on, this was like almost a year ago. And I saw it like by day he worked at HubSpot. So I'm like, okay, this is a slam dunk, should be a really easy conversation. And then, you know, the day before I try to get them to put together a little bio to give the group some heads up. And he's like, well, actually my problem is I own like a tobacco store in like Manhattan, like selling pens and lighters. And they're not moving right now. Like my store is shut down. And I was thinking, oh man, this is going to be a disaster. Like what are a bunch of SaaS sellers? Because 90% of the people on there are like in SaaS sales, right? What the heck are we going to tell this guy? And it was amazing, man. We had people, one of the girls came from Cameo before, and she's like, you should do this. And Morgan, I think Ingram was on that one. And it was a blast. Like, and so I just like this like total serendipitous, unique mix.
I want Scott to go on as a presenter, so then I can actually.
Yeah. So you can critique my my cold calls, Richard. Is that why?
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit more about like how did you even get in sales? Like where did it come from for you? Like were you the kid entrepreneur selling candy? You know, what was your deal?
I was giving my my teenager heck the other day because I was saying when I wanted something, I had to figure out how to buy it or sell something or flip something. I mean, I didn't come from like extreme poverty, but like, you know, single mom. And it was like, you know, I mowed lawns, I had a paper route, and we lived in a really like relatively small town. And so I was telling like I live in a bigger city now, and you know, it's my own fault. My kids have it good, but I was like, I didn't get cool clothes like this. Like I said, but the clothes that I got, I would sell to kids on my block. And so God. I think
wait, the clothes that you would get, you would sell to kids on your block. Would you sell them prior to using them, or were you selling used and old clothing?
So I mean, I'll date myself here, but in the time period of Crisscross, there was a store in the city we would go to like once in a month that had the pants with the pockets in the front. And I thought this was going to be cool. You know, this goofy, tall white kid wearing them. And then I went out to visit my family out east in Quebec, and my uncles just heckled the heck out of me. So like, as soon as I got off the plane and got home, I was telling all my neighbors who didn't leave town, like, these are the hottest thing, you should buy them. And
I love this story.
And basically offloaded them.
Crisscross was or is?
I know who Crisscross is. Good Lord.
I don't know. You're younger than me, dude.
Man, I was like 12, 13 years old when that happened. Okay.
All right. So
yeah, I think we're in a similar age range. And then I also had a friend who's this is actually kind of funny. So his mom owned the salon. he was I can't remember where he was from, Middle East or India. His dad had the video store, and every time you went in, you saw the stack of VCRs. He was clearly like recording stuff, and his video store would get shut down like every 6 months. But his dad, when he'd come back from traveling, I'd go upstairs in the salon with, I can't remember this kid's name, and he'd have suitcases, and he'd just start opening them, and there was all this like clothing that we wouldn't even get here, and I don't know if it was real or if it was legit. And so I would buy it, I would wear it for a few months, and then I would sell it. And now that I think back, it was so shady.
Not at all. There's nothing shady about that. You're a kid. You're hustling.
I'm just thinking, I bought something out of a suitcase. I don't even know if it's real, and then I'm reselling it. But like, I mean, you name it, like bikes, video games, anything I could flip. And then I got into, I mean, I did all sorts of like eaves troughing, landscaping, irrigation pipe, installation, welding. So welding was I tell people my tipping point story. I got laid off from that. And then I went to an unemployment office, and I'd been looking at like tech. So this was like 99. I thought, man, I'll get into tech and I'll be like a millionaire, because everybody's going into tech and it's just going to be amazing. And I was like the youngest guy in there. And because I spoke French, I was able to get a tech support job out of that. But in that course, the unemployment office called me and said, hey man, like you don't even qualify. You don't even have enough hours. But they had already cut me a check for this like, upskilling course. And so anyway, I got into tech, worked in help desks. I wanted to be like an IT manager. And like I was mentioning, I'd see the salespeople, and sometimes I was like, man, they're terrible. Like they can't even sell me the hardware. And little did I know. And then so eventually I was working for this consulting company. I basically convinced them that they needed a pre-sales role. And then I got into that, and that was like the tipping point, right? So then I was like, okay, I'm going to slowly find my way into sales. Then I actually left the like Microsoft ecosystem and went to a learning management system company, sold there, and then came back to this ecosystem, and the rest is history.
You want to change gears ever so slightly.
Yeah, that's fine.
Towards like the work that you've done to build your brand up, which I'm sure has been a big part of helping make 5 on Fridays a success. I don't know that show works the same way if people didn't know you and Amy and Patrick a little bit from the branding and the work that you've done. And one of the things that's risky and you hear people talk about is, when you put yourself out there often enough, you're going to get people who disagree with you or who are rude to you, or even worse, troll you, basically, right? So I want to talk about a moment last week where you wrote something and I disagreed with it, and you and I went back and forth a little bit on it. So talk a little bit about both the journey of putting yourself out there and the reality of some of the dark side of putting yourself out there like that. And then I want to get into a little bit of like how difficult and sensitive it is online to disagree with people, and how tough it is to navigate like that kind of relationship, because you and I know each other and are friendly, and you read the back and forth, and you hear something from somebody else from the outside, and they're like, hey, are you and Francois, like, you guys hate each other now? I'm like, what? I disagreed with like one fucking thing the guy said. Now I hate him? What are you talking about? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. No, so it's funny, right? Because I was, I remember looking, and I signed up for LinkedIn like, over a decade ago, but it just wasn't what it is now. And so I would say like about over a year ago is when I kind of doubled down. I said, okay, I think this personal brand thing has legs. And, there was all the stats around the amount of people that were actually posting on the platform. And then I started getting involved in more communities. And the end goal was never like, more me putting on more content equals leads. Because I got that question all the time as I became more active. People were like, hey man, you're doing this. Like, are you getting more business? I was like, no, that's not the intent here, right? I always went back to this analogy of it's a physical networking event turned virtual. So, if I'm running into Scott and Richard at these events, eventually they're going to know me and they're going to trust me. And eventually maybe a transaction will happen out of it. But maybe I'm playing too much of a long game. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But I would say, like, in terms of the tone, not so much the messaging, but, sometimes there's a bit of that lighter, fluffier, like rah, we can all do it. But I would say in the last like few months, I've probably taken a little bit of a page out of your book, Scott, in terms of like, I used to be like, I got to post this consistently on Monday to Friday. And now I'm just like, if it's not there, like if it's not something I feel like posting, I don't schedule it. I don't have a calendar.
Yeah.
But if something hits me, I put it in a note and then I post it the day after or the time up.
So that you and I are aligned on that part now. I didn't write anything today, for example. And I don't think I wrote anything Friday. I shared like one article, which is sometimes what I do when I can't think of what to say. So I don't force things anymore. But for all those listening, the thing that Francois and I disagreed on last week, Francois said, and Richard, this is what I give Richard hell for all the time too. So Francois said, never mind the whole theory of like the right time to post something, right? Just post whenever you want. And I read that initially as like, hold on, because if I post something at 9 o'clock at night versus 12 noon versus 9 o'clock in the morning, like that same content is going to get very different responses for me based on where my audience lives and what their habits are and whatnot. And, there are certain time slots that I know particular people always post during. And so I don't post during those slots because I want to like try to carve out my own a little bit. And so we went back and forth on that a little bit, which is, I'm always giving Richard grief because he'll like write something pretty cool and it's like 5 p.m. Central when it comes out. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? That's not the right time to try to get maximum engagement and be as helpful as possible to as many people as you can.
Yeah, and I don't have the conversation in front of me, but I remember it. And and I think I was also saying like, look, man, like, don't be a slave to the algorithm. And I like the analogy of posting at the right time. I get that, right? It's like you put your billboard on the main street or like in the alley. Like you might have the most phenomenal statement, but if nobody sees it, what does it matter? But I would argue the time zone is more like whether you put it on this main street or you put it on the whole other end of town where maybe nobody knows you. Because I think what can happen and what can be a bit dangerous is when you're often engaging, and I'm guilty of this, with the same group, then it becomes like an echo chamber. And Richard might actually get different eyeballs from people in different time zones because he posts at 5. You are maximizing that exposure time.
No, Richard
Scott,
does
and I don't think that's wrong.
Richard does it this way because Richard's not up at 6 in the morning in California, which is the optimal time, where Scott has a natural time zone built in so he can do it, right? So, and yes, I could buffer it, but then that affects the algorithm. There's all kinds of things. So, and lately my content hasn't been that good. Like I haven't been inspired to write a lot of good stuff. So,
well, that's something that's important, I think, for people to keep in mind and understand. Like there are highs and lows in your creativity or in your ability to produce good content and whatnot. But you don't want to totally disappear. You don't want to totally disappear, but it's hard. Richard, you and I have been at this for, Jesus, I don't know, 5+ years, 6 years.
Yeah, we've been at it a while.
Yeah, I've been at it for a while, trying to throw out like, useful, helpful information while also trying to be creative, push the envelope a little bit of like topics that are taboo or not talked about enough, while trying not to be a slave to the algorithm and do things that are obvious that are going to get the best reactions and whatnot. But it's exhausting sometimes.
Yeah,
I've made the joke with Richard that you'll know I'm ready to retire when I quit LinkedIn.
But to answer your earlier question too, which I don't think I did, I think it's a good sign typically if you are getting people disagreeing with you, right? Because it means there's some friction. It means it's like an important topic, and so I don't shy away from them. There's the odd troll. There's been very few, but I'm happy to engage with people and say, hey, we can agree to disagree here too.
It's tough. Richard is much better at this than me. Richard loves to get into good old fashioned, debates on LinkedIn and other platforms. And
it's the one place where I've learned to be more civil. If you try to have that conversation with me in person, I get very argumentative. So, which Scott, you probably
that's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, you're actually kinder behind a keyboard.
Yes,
that's pretty rare.
Yeah,
is it? So anyway, I know we got to wrap, and we're gonna shift to our favorite last question. Quick, give a shout out to Lead 411 Gong.io, the game changer in sales revenue intelligence, as well as Salesforce Sales Cloud, and Vidyard, the leader in video sales techniques and tools. So anyway, so our last question, Francois, is what can we do for you? How can we be of support to you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think honestly, I'll probably reach out like I said, we have a really good kind of queue or backlog of people that are happy to present and help on 5 on Friday. I think sometimes, again, not everybody's up for presenting. Not everybody knows about it, right? So sometimes somebody will say, hey, man, I know this SDR or this AE, and this is a piece, an area they'd love to practice. And I think this would be a great forum. And so, I think what maybe dissuades some people is this: they don't really want to do it in public, right? We do record it, we do a screen share, and honestly, I might tap you guys on the shoulder after this to get your thoughts on like what maybe we could do differently or better, or in terms of like I don't call it the platform. I don't like calling it a community either. To me, it's just like a weekly service.
So, or Scott can answer it now.
Oh man. In terms of what they could do better, I don't know. My default answer, I guess, would be the volume of them, and that's bandwidth and time commitment. And in Francois's case, not just from one person, from at least 3 other people who are regularly on the show. But I think one of the only reasons, Richard, that our podcast got traction or has any traction is because we do so many episodes of it. There's so much content all the time. There's 250 episodes now in a year and a half, right? So if I think about 5 on Friday, it's nice, but there's not that many of them. You've been at it for a year and a half, but you've had, 70 episodes, 60 something. So maybe can you do more 5 on Fridays? And they come out in batches. Like, how do you kind of try to scale that?
Yeah.
In some way, that's one thing that I think would be helpful and beneficial.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you, Richard?
I think it's pretty accurate. I've also stopped seeing it I used to see it on my feed more. I don't know if you guys have made an adjustment to how often you post about it. And this is a challenge we run into, is like we release podcasts enough, but then we don't necessarily go promote them enough, right? Because we're often promoting other content that we're writing. So it's that's often a bit of a challenge. So I like that. I like the idea of you promoting it more so people know that it's out there. Even if you can just start promoting it on Twitter or something like that. Like, we know Patrick. Patrick came to Surf and Sales, and he also writes brilliantly, aside from being a really well-grounded, connected human being who understands life and stress and sales and all those things. So I think there's some promotional opportunities there. I think, again, a place we're not great at is taking them and turning them into blog posts so you can get more mileage out of them, right? So my piece and what Scott and I are working on is that when you do something like on 5 on Friday, it's not one thing, it's an asset. So Could I write a LinkedIn post afterwards? Could I write a Twitter post? Could I write a blog post? Could I go create, videograms and audiograms of, snippets? And again, that becomes a whole other undertaking and time. But those are ways you can do.
And to be clear, we haven't succeeded at doing any of that stuff either.
Right. So we've just started doing some audiograms and videograms with our bonfire sessions that we do. And that's sort of like the gift back to the panelists, like, hey, we made this for you. And, if you want to go promote it and use it yourself, please feel free to do so. I promote a lot of stuff on Instagram now that I have someone who's doing it. So there are lots of little things you could do. I mean, I've got.
Do you guys, like, how many people do you have helping you guys with surf and sales?
1 to 2 that are not, full-time. They're just trying to be helpful.
But like, do you guys edit and all that, or you hand off the editing?
Well, we don't do editing.
So
okay.
No editing. That's the whole,
okay.
So now on the audio, so this is the part, where Scott, just thinks, wow, that's cool. Good job, Richard. Is, I do have someone who runs my website and marketing stuff. And so she helps, set up the landing pages and the registrations. And then I have another person who takes the content and has found someone on Upwork to go do the audiograms and videograms inexpensively and stuff like that. So I'm sort of putting some money into it to do those things. But again, I'm trying to just sort of up the brand a little bit as best we can.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be, like, I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but obviously we did this like a year ago. I think people were looking, like there was a real like desire for this type of, like, people wanted to connect. And so, I wouldn't say we're getting like much less interest, but like people might just be like, you know what, I want to go out now. Things are open. Like I don't want to sit on a Zoom call Friday practicing my sales pitch. Like I want to go out to a pub.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a little bit of saturation. The beautiful thing though, I think, is that you have a fan base and people who like to come to it. Same thing for Thursday night sales. Like they hit the mark so well, like they hit the bullseye straight out of the gate, and it's not going to go anywhere. I don't think people will give up Thursday night sales. Now they might come 3 times a month or whatever, but Thursday night sales really is just like going to the bar and hanging out. Of the few episodes I've been on and attended, it's no different than going to the bar, and it's a lot less expensive, and it's more meaningful conversations with people that you care about and who care about you, and they're in depth, and they're not always about sales. It's, they get personal and professional advice. And so, I think they feel that they filled a niche that, particularly for those of us, either early in their career where they have the time, or we're older in our career and we have family and other commitments that, I can at least jump in for 30 or 45 minutes on a Thursday. I don't have to like get in the car and go anywhere and do all that. So I think they'll survive indefinitely, short of Amy or Scott, deciding to end it, which I don't think they're going to do.
I've brought some people in outside of sales, somebody from marketing who I was like, look, man, you're going to work with the sales team. This is a great way to kind of hear their perspective. And he was just like, man, this is great. Like, I love hearing this unfiltered, like raw. He didn't think this type of kind of discussion existed. So I think it's got legs for sure. In summer it'll be tough, but I think you got a good core there, and it's going to last.
I think anybody putting on events, on online events of any kind, there's going to be a natural kind of challenge here, because like you said, people want to go back to the pub. People now are vaccinated and able to travel and do different things. And I think that there'll be, kind of like this big step away from some of the online stuff for a while. But I think you got to try to not get too caught up in like, oh, our numbers are down or whatever, like, because there'll be a snap back. Yep. Even if it lasts all summer long, there's still a snap back when everybody's kids go back to school.
Yep.
And things like that, right?
Winter comes along, like I think that's big for Thursday night.
And if
it's just cold, you don't want to go outside. So.
And if you've done a good job of being helpful and being consistent, like, people show up to the things that they enjoy and that they get value from, right? And it depends on what your goals are, I guess. But if I was solely trying to get to 1,000 attendees every single night, that would be discouraging for my Thursday night sales work. But that's not really the goal. The work is build a strong community and a place for people to hang out, have fun, and engage and listen and learn a little bit. And like Richard said, if the size of the community grows overall, but the number of attendees every Thursday night stays roughly the same or grows really slowly, I think that's totally fine, because some people will go once a month rather than 4 times a month, but people know it's there.
Yep.
People know it's there and they know what they're going to get. And I think that, you know, finding more ways to entrench 5 on Friday to have that same kind of vibe or thought process could be helpful for all of you, you know?
Yeah, cool. No, that's good feedback.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
Francois, thanks for joining us, man. Really a pleasure, and good question too. That was not a question we've had to answer in a long time at all. So that was a good one. So.
No, this is fun, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, man.
Take
Talk
care.
soon.